you all to the June 21st, 2021 meeting of the Pacifica Planning Commission. And before we hit the meat of the agenda, I want to go ahead and share some preliminary notes regarding the way this meeting will be conducted. This meeting will be conducted pursuant to the provisions of the Governor's Executive Order N2520 and N2920, which suspends certain requirements of the Brown Act, and pursuant to the orders of the Health Officer of San Mateo County. And as this meeting is necessary so that the city can conduct necessary business, it is permitted under the orders as an essential governmental function. Commissioners, the Assistant City Attorney, and city staff essential to this meeting will be video teleconferencing into the meeting, and there will be no physical location open to the public. The public can observe the meeting while sheltering at home via the Zoom link as the primary means of participation, or via the cable channel 26 or live stream broadcast as alternate methods of viewing the meeting. Participation via the Zoom link will enable the meeting to be observed live and will enable the public to speak during public comment periods. The Zoom link was published in the meeting agenda. Live public comments are being accepted at this meeting in place of emailed public comments. Public comments may be provided live by members of the public utilizing the Zoom link to participate in the meeting. Utilize the raise hand function in the Zoom application on a computer, smartphone, or tablet, or enter *9 to raise your hand if you're dialing in by phone. Please ensure your name is correctly entered in your Zoom profile so city staff may properly identify you when it is your turn to speak. Those dialing in by phone will be called to speak by the last 4 digits of their phone number as shown in the Zoom interface. So with that said, we'll go ahead and move into the agenda proper, and we'll start with a roll call, please.
Commissioner Berman.
Present.
Commissioner Domerat.
Present.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Present.
Commissioner Godwin.
Present.
Commissioner Hauser.
Present.
Commissioner Leal.
Present.
Commissioner Nublin.
Present.
All commissioners are present.
Great. We'll move then to the salute to the flag, and I'll ask that Commissioner Berman lead us in the salute to the flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner Berman. The next matter of administrative business is approval of the order of agenda. Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda? Commissioner Leal.
I'll make a motion to approve the order of the agenda.
Commissioner Leal has moved to approve the order of agenda. Is there a second? Commissioner Berman.
A second.
Great. We have a motion and a second to approve the order of agenda. Mr. Murdoch, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Berman.
Yes.
Commissioner Domerat.
Yes.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Yes.
Commissioner Godwin.
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser.
Yes.
Commissioner Leal.
Yes.
Commissioner Nublin.
Yes.
And that motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. It doesn't look like we have any minutes to approve this evening. Is that right, Mr. Murdoch?
That's correct.
Thank you. And there's no need for a designation of liaison to the city council meeting?
That's correct. To reiterate what was shared previously, the lot 3 Harmony at 1 appeals that were expected to be heard in an upcoming meeting, those are not occurring at this time. We anticipate a hearing in August, most likely, and so we will seek a liaison at a subsequent planning commission meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. We'll look forward to that. That will then take us to oral communications. And this is the portion of the agenda that's available to the public to address the Planning Commission on any issue within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission that is not on the agenda. The time allowed for any speaker will be 3 minutes. And I guess I'll ask at this point, Mr. Murdoch, for you to determine whether or not there's anyone to address us under oral communications.
Yes, there is, Chair. We have one hand raised at this time, so I will set us up and advise the commenter when we're ready.
Thank you.
The first speaker is Nick Lusson. Please go ahead. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Lassan. Please go ahead.
Great. Good evening, commissioners. First off, I just want to say thank you to all of you for your service to the community. I've been intending on attending one of your meetings, but it's been a busy month on my end. I am a resident of Higgins Way down in Lindemar. I'm also the president of the newly formed Protect San Pedro Mountain nonprofit organization. We have organized in order to preserve the hillside region, the foothills of San Pedro Mountain. In particular, due to development plans that I believe most of you should be aware of, but I just kind of want to make sure community's aware as well, called Lindemar Woods and Hillside Meadows, currently applying as 2 separate projects, although we are of the opinion that this is a singular project that's a piecemealing approach. We are a 501c3. Our intent is on preservation. We're a community-led initiative that just started not too long ago, but already we have a mailing list of over 500 residents here in Pacifica. We do encourage people to come visit this space. You can see on our website at protectsanpedromountain.org the information about the proposed project and our concerns with it, but nothing quite compares to actually seeing it firsthand and what this would entail. There's a good video on our website that also outlines what the proposed project of development looks like. One key tenet that we've really kind of narrowed in on of concern concerning this is the Hillside Preservation District Ordinance. There's clearly a debate in our community about the interpretation of the ordinance, and that's fair. But it's what is obvious, and I think everyone can agree, is that it's been in place for decades and it's been interpreted in a specific manner. So a precedent has been set for our community in preserving our hillsides. We believe it's be improper for the city staff and the commission to change that interpretation unilaterally without having a full and inclusive community opportunity for discussion around the change of how this ordinance has been employed for our community for decades. So we're asking for that. We're asking for a consideration and a healthy public discourse. We do welcome a civil discourse with all interested parties. We're trying to take an approach of working with all of you, and we certainly appreciate your time and energy on these things. And we know this is a project farther out on the horizon, but we're happy to discuss it and happy to host anybody that wants to come up and take a look. And then just, once more, if you want to learn more, please visit our website at www.protectsanpedromountain.org. And again, I just want to say thank you to everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Mr. Lussan. Mr.
And
Murdoch,
I'm seeing no other hands, Chair.
okay, then we'll go ahead and close that oral communications portion of the agenda, and we'll move on to confirm that there are no consent items this evening. Is that right?
Correct.
Excellent. So the next portion of the agenda is for new public hearings, and the first new public hearing this evening is TUP 1-21, and this is file number 2021-016, temporary use permit TUP 1-21, to allow continued installation of a temporary structure to enclose Ocean Shore Railroad car number 1409, and to perform restoration work on the railroad car on a portion of the Valimar Center Shopping Center located at 2125 Coast Highway. The recommended CEQA action is a Class 4 categorical exemption pursuant to Section 15304 of the CEQA guidelines. And staff's recommendation is that we approve this application as conditioned. So I'll go ahead and ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Deputy Director of Planning, Christian Murdoch. The item before you is for a temporary use permit to allow the continued placement of Ocean Shore Railroad car number 1409 on a portion of the Valimar Center Shopping Center at the intersection of Highway 1 and Reina Del Mar Avenue. The Pacifica Historical Society intends to continue its renovation of the rail car to preserve it as an important element of Pacifica's history and to ultimately open the rail car at another location as a museum of interactive exhibits and historical items. The authorization, which would be granted with this permit, would be for an initial term of 6 months, with Planning Director authorization to grant up to 2 additional terms of 6 months if the applicant requires additional time to identify another location for installation and renovation of the car, or the applicant has encountered logistical difficulties in timely relocating the car upon the expiration of the initial term of the permit. Any extension would be preceded by public notice to surrounding residents and property owners. The placement of the rail car would continue in the fashion that exists at the site today. The Planning Commission previously granted a temporary use permit for the initial installation of the rail car in November 2019. Due to unforeseen circumstances related to COVID-19 in 2020, the Pacifica Historical Society requires additional time to complete renovations of the rail car and to relocate it to a permanent location for display. The rail car rests on wooden cribbing within an enclosure structure erected around the rail car. Security fencing is installed around the perimeter of the enclosure. The installation also includes motion sensor security lighting within the fenced perimeter to discourage vandalism of the rail car. The renovation work on the rail car would continue to be performed periodically when volunteers are available. All work would occur within the same authorized hours as construction within the city. Renovation work would involve operation of a generator to power interior lighting within the enclosure structure and small hand tools and power tools needed for the primarily carpentry work needed to restore the wood-framed rail car. Staff is unaware of any complaints about the operation of the rail car renovations since approval of temporary use permit TUP-2-19 in November 2019. As conditioned, staff believes the temporary use is appropriate for the project site. It would not be likely to have adverse impacts on surrounding business owners or residents. Therefore, staff recommends finding the project exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act and adopting the attached resolution to approve the temporary use permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Are there any questions from commissioners for Mr. Murdoch before we, by way of clarification or detail that needs fleshed out before we move to the to hear from the project applicant? Commissioner Demerat.
Yeah, just a question as to how the planning department looked at the generator situation. Since it was stated in the documentation that these were kind of small, fine crafting tools, was there any consideration given to like electric power generator that would make no noise? The tools make noise, but the small tools probably wouldn't make much noise. But you see, in the media a lot, they're making a lot of these battery systems that can probably power these tools for a week. So I was just wondering if there was any consideration from the generator. Gas generator certainly would make a lot of noise, but electric probably would not.
Sure, that's not something that the staff evaluated. The applicant had proposed to use a gas power generator, and we evaluated that and did not identify any concerns with the placement and the limited duration of the use, as well as the small size of the generator. I think I understand that to be a piece of equipment that the crew already has as well. And I suspect they would incur additional costs by purchasing some sort of battery pack unit, but I think it's a fair question to ask the applicant to potentially further minimize sound or other impacts to the community.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Demerat. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. A question regarding the work hours. And I had a sense of deja vu when I was reviewing the packet, because I know we reviewed this in 2019. And I want to say I probably had this question back then too, but I'll ask it anyways. So the staff report mentions that the anticipated work hours are 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then COA number 10, I believe, mentions I think just the standard city permitted work hours, which are 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. on work days. I appreciate, Mr. Murdoch, that you mentioned there were no complaints over the past year and a half, but I'm wondering if we should consider changing the COA to be consistent with the actual anticipated work hours of 8 to 5.
I don't believe there will be any objection from staff with such a change. I think it would be helpful to understand from the applicant's perspective if they need some flexibility, that typically they work from 8 to 5, for instance, but on occasion they need an earlier start or a later finish to accommodate volunteer schedules, for example.
Mm-hmm. And the fact that there have not been any complaints to date makes me okay with either approach. But at the same time, I know for at least a year of the time where the car was at this location, everyone was working from home, and I don't believe much work was done on the car. So just looking ahead, now that we're getting back into the swing of things, I'd hate for complaints to start all of a sudden.
Sure. It's my understanding that they actually have made substantial progress on the renovations through COVID, but it did affect during certain periods their ability to have the number of volunteers, for example, while observing social distancing. And so there were impacts on the timeline. So I think the applicant can probably give a fairer characterization of the extent of the work, but it's my understanding that it did occur during the shelter in place and work from home scenario that we encountered, beginning in 2020.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any additional hands. I'm going to go ahead then and move on to hear from the applicant. If the applicant would like to speak to the matter, we'll go ahead and afford up to 10 minutes for the applicant to speak to the matter.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to promote the applicants to panelists, and they'll be able to speak in just a moment. And I was having some difficulty promoting one of them to panelists, but it looks like she has joined us now.
Great. Looks
So
like
Kathleen, if you could just please confirm those individuals that may speak on your behalf as applicant include Shirley Gibbs and Scott Lindner.
I see that we have Ms. Gibbs and it looks like Kathleen Manning's joined us as well. Is that right?
That's correct, Chair. They are both on mute right now. Kathleen, could you please unmute yourself and begin your presentation?
Oh, Shirley Gibbs is going to give the financial. Shirley?
All right, and before you get started, I'll remind you, as the applicant, you have 10 minutes to make your presentation about your application. Shirley, you are also on mute.
Hello?
Yes, Ms. Gibbs, please go ahead.
Yes, my name is Shirley Gibbs. I am currently Vice President of the Pacifica Historical Society, and I am a volunteer for the Historical Society's Ocean Shore Railroad project. We're here this evening to request a temporary use permit for restoration of the train passenger car. My responsibilities include the terms of the lease, the insurance, payroll, and accounts payable. In November of 2019, we first applied and were issued the temporary use permit. But in February 2021, we were notified by Planning Director Mr. Murdoch that our temporary permit had expired. But for the entire year of 2020, we were denied the opportunity to work on the train car because of the COVID-19 issues. Recently, we have begun to order materials and are anxious to complete restoration when all the requirements are filled according to the planning department guidelines. It was written on the original application that the term extended for 2 years, only later to discover imprinted that the application was not good for more than 90 days. If possible, may we request that the terms extend for 1 year from this application date. Hopefully in that 1 year, we will have complete restoration, especially of the interior of the car completed. When Planning Director, I should say Deputy Planning Director, Mr. Murdoch notified us that would be on tonight's agenda, he requested answers to some questions. First was the terms of our lease for the property at 2125 Coast Highway in Valimar, where the train car is currently located. Our original lease for a term of 2 years with the Pereira family, property owners, will expire on September of this year. There was an option to renew in the terms of the lease, and the owners have agreed to extend the lease with the same conditions and provisions for a period of 1 year. Deputy Planning Director Murdoch also requested an estimate of how long we will need to complete restoration of the train car. Again, hopefully at this time, we will have the train car in a movable condition within the year. Also asked was about a temporary enclosure after permanent placement of the train. The train committee has discussed the possibility of building a replica or facade of the original Brighton Beach train station that was situated just across the way from the community museum. In conclusion, we are extremely thankful for the City Council's decision to include this historic Ocean Shore passenger car for placement in the vicinity of the new Pacifica Civic Complex. We thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Gibbs. Ms. Manning, I think there's probably a little time remaining if there was anything else that you all wanted to say.
Well, I would just like to add that we're very pleased and excited that we'll be part of the proposed new Civic Center. I think will be an important part, and I think we'll find that in the future, a lot of people will be attracted to the historic train car, plus the inside of the wonderful exhibits we have inside the museum. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Manning, Ms. Gibbs. So we've heard from the applicant. I guess then the question is whether or not there's anybody among attendees who would like to speak to this matter. Mr. Murdoch, I'll ask you to let us know.
Thank you, Chair. Is it your sense that the commission doesn't have any further questions for the applicant at this point in time?
Yeah, I think what I want to do is hear public comment, and then we'll go ahead and bring it back to commission.
Very good. Thank you, Chair. So I see one hand raised from Jay Crow. Please get ready. I'll let you know in just a moment when you're ready to speak. All right, Jay Crow, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Jay Crow, you are on mute. Thank you. Unmute yourself and please go ahead.
Thank you. This is Deidre and Jerry Crow, and I've called Pacifica my hometown since 1954. I'd just like to add a few points quickly that a noted historian for the Ocean Shore Railroad, John Schmalley, knows of at least 7 or more train organizations just in Northern California that will travel to Pacifica, stay in our hotels, eat in our restaurants, and purchase many things from our gift shop and bookstore about the Ocean Shore Railroad. It's one of the most popular of historic railroads, and we are going to realize that revenue before you know it. Also, this does not count Southern California or the 14 Western states with active and well-to-do rail fans. Rail fans are a demographic that are retired, wealthy, and need someplace to go. And we have it right here for them waiting. The perceived value of a destination, the destination of a restored railroad car to the city of Pacifica Civic Center and its citizens is simply immeasurable. How is it possible to monetize the joy on our children's faces or their parents' delight in watching their children learn about the historic railroad that steamed down our coastside over 100 years ago? Well, also, the city of Pacifica will realize retail tax revenues from local sales in our museum bookstore and gift shop, not to mention online and eBay sales. Again, John Schmalley mentioned that our programs on the Ocean Shore are our best attended and enjoyed by our community. Please help us keep the dream alive and extend our TUP. Thank you so much for your time and attention.
Thank you, Ms. Crow and Mr. Crow. Mr. Murdoch, are there any other comments?
I see no additional hands raised, Chair.
Thank you. We'll go ahead then and bring it back to the commission and see if there are any comments or further questions, perhaps for the applicant from commissioners or corporation. I'll go ahead and open it to my colleagues. Commissioner Berman.
Thank you. Just touching back on my question earlier, wondering if, Ms. Manning, if you believe that the 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. timeframe is a suitable timeframe, or is more time needed to complete the work on the car?
No,
during-
I think that sounds very, very sensible.
Mhm.
We're happy to conform to that.
Okay. That's all the questions that I had for now, but we could deliberate on that with my fellow commissioners later.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman. Any other questions or comments or such? If not, a motion would certainly be in order if that was someone's desire as well. Commissioner Ferguson,
Yeah, I'd be ready to make a motion.
please go ahead.
Yeah, I move that the commission find that the project is exempt from CEQA and that we approve temporary use permit TUP 1-21 and adopt the attached resolution by staff.
Thank you, Commissioner Ferguson. Commissioner Hauser.
I'll second that motion.
Great. I was hoping, perhaps recognizing we have a motion in the second, I was hoping perhaps we might consider a friendly amendment to incorporate Commissioner Berman's sort of concerns, or to address Commissioner Berman's concerns about the hours of operation.
And Chair Niblin, thank you for bringing it back to this. So the only concern that I have, which it's a very, very small concern, is that once life goes back to normal, if there's a generator running at 7 p.m., I know there's homes, or I can't remember if it was apartments or homes directly behind the car. I'd hate for there to be complaints all of a sudden. That's my only concern. If the rest of the commission desires, I'm fine making the motion and voting to approve the TUP as presented to us with the COA that states 7 to 7. I just wanted to hear other people's thoughts.
And I apologize that Commissioner Ferguson and Commissioner Berman, I probably should have afforded some opportunity to vet that out. But Commissioner Ferguson, as the maker of the motion, I'd defer to you as to whether or not you'd want to amend it. Commissioner Godwin, looks like you had something you wanted to say as well.
Yeah, I don't think we should not consider Commissioner Domerat's point that there's very cheap battery power packs that would eliminate the noise from a gasoline generator for, they're available for under $300. It's certainly worth asking about that as well.
I think that's a good point. And I'm wondering, Ms. Manning or Ms. Gibbs, whether or not you all have considered all that, recognizing there is a fiscal impact to all of that. And I have to admit, I'm ignorant as to what the costs are or the availability. But I don't know if you all had any comments you wanted to offer to that.
Well, I guess we could look into it. I don't think I think that the workers are very cognizant of neighbors and having a good relationship. And I think they're very careful about their hours. There's just no conflict. They never start that early anyways.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that it's an issue, but we can look into it.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. For myself, I'd say that particularly to the extent that Commissioner Ferguson and Commissioner Hauser are willing to sort of modify their motion and their second to sort of address the working hours as suggested by Commissioner Berman. I think for future projects, we'd want to keep our eye on Commissioner Domerat's suggestion. I'd be comfortable moving forward without incorporating that into the conditions.
Okay, good. We'll investigate that and see. I'll talk to the workers.
Thank you, Ms. Manning. Commissioner Ferguson, I'll bring it back to you. And obviously you don't have any obligation to adjust your motion, but if you were inclined to, I thought I'd offer you the opportunity.
No, I guess two things. One, was I misunderstanding that they're using the generators also for site lighting, which might make it harder for a
No. Sure, surely aren't those lights solar?
Yes, they are motion scented lights and they're the exterior. Currently, there's no lighting within the train.
Understood. I'm happy to amend the motion with Commissioner Berman's condition of approval, especially since the applicant has already agreed to abide by it.
All right, great. And Commissioner Hauser, would you continue to second on that basis? Great.
Yes.
And Chair, I would ask if Vice Chair Berman could once more confirm the hours that she's seeking with that amendment.
Yes, the hours, so the amendment would be to COA number 10, and the hours would be consistent with the staff report and the applicant's confirmation to be 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. during the weekdays.
And so that would result in 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. limitation all days of the week. So Monday through Sunday.
My main concern was the weekdays. I don't recall, and forgive me, Mr. Murdoch, did the staff report identify a different time frame for the weekends that was in the staff report, not necessarily in the COA?
I will have to look back for the indicated weekend hours.
If everyone agrees,
Yeah.
7 days a week, 8 to 5 p.m. sounds pretty safe to me, given that it's so close to homes.
I would just add that the construction hours in the municipal code are actually 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on the weekend. And so
Okay.
we might want to distinguish between weekdays and weekends then for that beginning time.
So then I guess my previous statement still stands. So 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. for weekdays, and then standard municipal code for the weekends.
Okay.
I think we all understand the motion then. And I'll ask for a roll call vote.
Chair, would you allow me to read the revised condition in its entirety before we take the roll call vote?
Yes, please go ahead.
And so the motion would revise condition of approval number 10 to read, construction and renovation operations shall be limited to the hours of 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Monday through Friday and 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you for that clarification. And Commissioner Ferguson, that's consistent with your understanding of your motion. Great. Why don't we go ahead and get a roll call vote then?
Commissioner Berman,
Yes.
Commissioner Domerat,
Yes.
Commissioner Ferguson.
Yes.
Commissioner Godwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner Leal,
Yes.
Commissioner Noblin.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. I thank you, Ms. Gibbs, Ms. Manning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move then to the second of our new public hearings, and that's CDP 42320, file number 2020-017, Coastal Development Permit, CDP 42320, filed by Jarl and Monica Meager to construct an 838 square foot partial second story addition to an existing one story, 1,568 square foot single family dwelling on a 5,000 square foot lot located at 544 Dolphin Drive. The recommended CEQA action is a Class 1 categorical exemption pursuant to Section 15301 of the CEQA guidelines, and the recommendation from staff is that the commission approve this project as conditioned. And I'll go ahead, please, and I believe ask Mr. Garcia for a staff report this evening.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening, Commissioners. It's a pleasure to present in front of all of you tonight. My name is Jake Garcia. I'm a contract planner, and the project before you this evening involves a second-story addition to an existing one-story single-family residence in the West Edgemore neighborhood. The addition requires commission review because the project site is located in the appeal jurisdiction of the coastal zone. In this area, additions as small as 10% of an existing structure's height, bulk, or floor area trigger the requirement for review and approval of a coastal development permit. The city has received 2 written public comments on this project. One comment letter is attached to the staff report, and one more letter is posted on the Planning Department webpage for public review. Both comment letters raise concerns of the potential impacts imposed by coastal hazards affecting the project site, and one letter further highlights the project's need to meet the local coastal program. Staff has addressed these points in the staff report. Staff has reviewed the proposed addition, which would add 838 square feet to an existing 1,568 square foot single family residence, and found that it complies with all zoning standards. In addition, the project would, in staff's assessment, result in a well-integrated addition that is consistent with the design guidelines. Staff's detailed analysis of the project is contained in the staff report, and staff recommends approval of the project as conditioned. Thank you, and I'm available to answer any questions you may have. And the applicant team would like to introduce themselves and have prepared a short presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. We'll turn to the applicant here in a couple of moments, but first we'll hear whether or not commissioners have questions or clarifications they'd like to get from you, Mr. Garcia. I see Commissioner Hauser, you have your hand up.
Hi, thank you, Chair. So I have several questions. So number one is, if the footprint is going to be the same, why is the percent landscape being reduced? Is it just the deck that's been attached on the rear?
Yes, that is correct. There is a deck that is being proposed at the second story on the rear, and there's a paved patio below that.
Okay. Are any trees being proposed for removal in the rear yard?
No.
And then there's a greenhouse that's depicted on the plans, but it looks, I mean, is that a new greenhouse? It looks to be within the side yard setback, which is why I ask.
That is an existing greenhouse.
So it's grandfathered in?
Yes.
Well, Commissioner Hauser, we haven't specifically analyzed that existing structure for zoning compliance. I will note that accessory buildings in many instances can have setbacks as small as 18 inches on the side and rear property lines. So without further analysis, I don't know that I can conclude it violates the zoning, but there's a chance it may actually comply.
Okay. Okay. Is there an impact to the property line? There's a substantial tree that looks kind of like a cypress that's on the property line. Is that going to need to be pruned or impacted in any way by this project?
The applicant has indicated that the scope of work will be outside of the drip line of that tree.
Okay. And I didn't see a condition of approval that protected that tree. Was that something that staff had contemplated?
Not specifically, given that we evaluated the work would occur outside the drip line. Our heritage tree protections require us to address those situations when work would occur within the drip line or otherwise directly impact the tree through trimming or removal.
Okay, and then the only other question that I had was the California Coastal Commission letter. I don't believe, that there was a condition that was added based on that recommendation. Is it, would it be outside of the norm to do what they were recommending and record a deed restriction? I'm just not familiar.
In my opinion, yes, it would be, Commissioner Hauser. The commission confronted this issue on the project known as 1300 Danman, as well as the 277 Kent project. The Coastal Commission staff made similar comments. And at that time, I articulated what I'll articulate today, which is that those are well-meaning provisions, but they're not currently policies that are in the city's local coastal program. We have similar language in the certification draft local coastal land use plan that's pending before the Coastal Commission for certification today. But we haven't found a nexus to this project that would require us or justify imposing it on an ad hoc basis. Although we could explore that further if the commission develops new information on that point.
Okay. Thank you. That answers all my questions. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Hauser. I don't see any other hands up for the moment. So I think what I'll do is go ahead and allow the project applicant to speak to the project. So Mr. Murdoch, Mr. Garcia, I'll leave it to you to launch us on that.
Thank you, Chair. I've promoted Brian Brinkman as well as Jarl and Monica. So please go ahead, whichever of you will kick off the presentation. You have 10 minutes.
Great, thank you. This is Jarl and Monica Maher, and I want to thank you guys all for taking the time to review our project tonight, and a thank you to city staff for all of the work that's gone into it in the last few weeks preparing. So we've lived in Pacifica for almost 6 years, and we're grateful to call the city our home. Jarl even lived here when he was in college and really got to know the surf spots. And he can't believe that he can walk to surfing from his house now. It's kind of a lifelong dream come true already. Jarl's also a local business owner here in Pacifica. His company does electric vehicle charging, solar and battery backups. And we love this neighborhood and this community. You know, we stay active in the community. We're members of the Moose Lodge, Pacifica Mothers Club, and our 2 children go to local daycares here in Pacifica. So, you know, we're pursuing this project so we have more space for our growing family. You know, this will allow our home to be what we like to call our forever home. So with that, I'll turn it over to Brian to give you guys more details. And again, just want to thank you guys all tonight.
Thanks, Brian Brinkman, designer for the project you have in front of you tonight. Like Monica said, they came to me last summer. Actually, her father is an architect down in Santa Cruz, and he kind of came up with an initial concept for the project. And then they came to me to kind of see it through. So we worked together with him to come up with the design before you tonight. In it, he analyzed siting the addition on the property to push it back from the street as much as possible to help reduce the massing from the street and into the neighborhood. Utilize low slope roofs that are consistent with the rest of the neighborhood, and just kept that coastal aesthetic that all the homes in the vicinity have. We also placed windows to help add light, create views, and visually enhance the exterior of the building while still being sensitive to the privacy of both Monica and Jarl, their family, as well as the neighboring homes. And I think we've done a good job with that. With that, I'm here to answer any questions you have, and thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Mr. Brinkman. I think then we will go ahead and see if we have any public comment then, Mr. Murdoch.
Thank you, Chair. There are currently 2 hands raised, so I will get us set up. All right. Charlotte McCosey, please go ahead. You have 3 minutes. Charlotte, you are on mute.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time to hear my comments. So one of the questions I had, and I will say that I'm a resident on Esplanade Avenue, and I live directly west of where this project is going to be, where the addition is planned. And one of the questions I had is, what precedent does this project set for homes on Esplanade Ave for building up in the future? If there are any homes along Esplanade that would want to build up, does this project being approved impact their ability to build up in the case that it could impact the new view that the house on Dolphin Drive will be gaining? And then, so that's sort of my first question. And then the second question I had was that, looking at, I am the house that has that giant cypress tree on the property. And I did see that there were a couple, concerns about the cypress tree being there. And I do want to know as well, whether there are any plans to be trimming the branches, which would even greater so reduce our sense of privacy. And that is sort of a concern for us, or any plans to try and have removal of the tree. And then thirdly, I guess the other thing is I'm not opposed to the project by any means, but I do have some concerns in regards to the amount of the number of windows in addition to the 2 decks that are going to be on the property and the lack of privacy we may have in our own backyard. And in the back of our house as well, we have a dining room and living room and a bedroom that are on the back side of our home that, you know, will have a lack of privacy with the new additional number of windows and the number of decks. Again, I'm not opposed to the fact that they want to do this project, but I think we do have some slight issues of privacy, and would also like to know about, you know, the ability, if we were or anybody else on our block were to choose to build up, would we be able to do so, even if it did potentially block their new view? So those are my questions, and thank you so much for taking the time to hear my concerns.
Thank you, Ms. McCosy. I believe there's another public commenter, Mr. Murdoch.
There are 2 more, Chair. C. Abbott, please go ahead.
Hello, this is Cindy Abbott, and really appreciate people wanting to update and improve their homes and grow and be longtime residents here in the city of Pacifica. I do have a concern for the long term of the city and our economic health. And 50 years ago, the City of Pacifica Planning Commissions and City Councils didn't anticipate that the El Nino storms of 1997, 1998 would result in an entire block of homes on Esplanade tumbling onto the beach as the coastal cliffs eroded. But we know better now, and we've seen what can happen as nature has its way. In February of 2020, the current City Council approved what is now known as the Local Coastal Program Certification Draft that includes language that Commissioner Hauser referred to that was put into a recommendation from the California Coastal Commission. And I really think that it would be prudent to include that language protecting the city of Pacifica from liability, that be included as part of the conditions of approval for this project and any others that might come up in an area such as this. Again, it might seem extreme and not necessary, but if we look back in our coastal history, we should be learning from what's happened in the past to those homes and the expense and costs that it took for the city to deal with structures that ultimately ended up needing to be removed. So I would strongly suggest that the recommendation made from the California Coastal Commission be followed, and that language that is also part of future pending city policies that was the part that a lot of public input was given about, that be included for this project, and that we don't go with the technicality here about including this language today. It's for everyone's protection. Hopefully it will never be needed, but I think that it's worthwhile to consider putting that into the conditions of approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abbott. Mr. Murdoch.
The next speaker is Christine Bowles. You have 3 minutes. Please go ahead.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Christine Bowles, and I'm a resident of the Manor District and often walk in this area. Welcome to the neighborhood. I do have a few technical questions about this project. First of all, there appear to be some errors on the staff report on the second page, analyzing the zoning conformance. I understand the decks are at the rear and are not part of the addition, but the staff report says the setbacks are existing at 30 feet 9 inches and that there's no change, but those decks do indeed encroach into that area, and the new setback is 21 feet 9 inches, so that should be corrected. Secondly, the tree canopy shown on the plans is not accurate. If you look at a Google Earth image, you'll see that the canopy extends over the entire width of the rear yard. I believe an arborist report and at a minimum tree protection measure should be required to ensure the tree survives during construction. Thirdly, and more importantly, I'm very confused as to the letter from the Coastal Commission on the last page of the staff report that doesn't appear to have been addressed at all. There are no neighborhood compatibility assessments or visual and scenic resource studies from Palmetto in the staff report, which the Coastal Commission says is required to assess compatibility with LUP policies. The project proposes an 838 square foot addition, which is more than 50% of the existing square footage. My understanding is that passing this 50% threshold triggers additional requirements from the commission to analyze additional potential hazards. As I'm sure you all know, this area is subject to extreme bluff erosion. There were several homes and apartment buildings removed just a block away just a few years ago on Esplanade. If I remember correctly, the 2020 study by Griggs said that these are some of the most friable cliffs in all of California. The current general plan safety element, as well as the 2014 drafts general plan safety element, were all written before these catastrophic events and do not address the real hazards posed on these very friable cliffs. I know that there have been at least 2 projects approved by the Planning Commission in the last year that were appealed to the Coastal Commission and then denied. I just want to make sure you're doing the proper analysis so that the owners will not need to go through a long and complicated appeal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bowles.
There are no other hands raised at this time, Chair.
Okay, none others. Thank you. You know, one of the things that we historically have done, and I assume there's probably some of the 10 minutes left, was to afford the applicant the opportunity to speak to matters that were raised in public comment. And I believe that's been our practice. Mr. Brinkman, I'm going to ask if you briefly have any responses to to some of the matters that have been raised in public comment.
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Nevlin. Just to the tree, as is indicated in the plans and the staff report, there's no proposed trimming of the tree. The tree was measured from the extension to the east towards the existing home. So the tree depicted on the site plan represents what the canopy of the tree, how it projects towards the house now. And we were careful we didn't want to do anything with the tree. Jarl and Monica liked that tree there. So we didn't want to do anything that would disturb that. As in reference to the Google Earth, perhaps I don't have it shown as wide as it actually is. I kind of did a circular canopy of the tree. And again, I was just measuring the critical point to our project, which was how it extends towards the existing house and the subject work. Don't think I have anything else. I don't know if Joe and Monica, if you had anything.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll go ahead then and bring the matter back to the Planning Commission, and I'll ask my fellow commissioners for any deliberation, questions, comments that they care to raise. Commissioner Hauser, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions for the applicant, if it's appropriate, and then I had some comments.
Yeah, please go ahead with any questions.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask if the applicant would be adding solar. You mentioned that you were in the business and I didn't see it on the roof plan, so I was curious to know if that was considered.
Yeah, that's definitely something. We want to focus on the simplest aspects of getting the project. But yeah, we'll definitely be pursuing solar and getting your approval down the line. Absolutely.
And then Mr. Brinkman, I really like the majority of the design, but I did notice that 3 of the 4 elevations are very, there's only, I'm like blanking on the word here, but the facades are a little bit flat, even though there's a change in materials. And I understand, you know, on the side elevations that you're a little bit constrained by the setback line. But is there any room on the front elevation? And I'm looking at both the site plan and the 3D renderings. You're within the front yard, or you have some room on the front yard setback. Is there any chance that you could provide a change in elevation between the the block portion and the hardy board siding portion of the home to create a little bit more visual interest?
Apologize. So you're referring to at the garage there at the front?
Yeah, and I know that it would be probably atypical to bring a garage proud of the living space, and I know you're probably trying to maintain the existing living space, but I just having them on the same plane, and then having the east and west elevation all also on the same plane, it's reading a little bit flat to me, and I think there needs to be a little bit more depth.
Gotcha. As far as the garage, the existing garage is basically at the setback. I mean, we have a few inches to play with. So we couldn't bring that out further or push it back because we're dealing with the existing single car garage that we need to keep at a minimum what it is now.
Maybe I'm misreading it. The staff report says the existing front setback is 20 foot 3 inches and the requirement is 15 inches. So I thought you had a couple of feet to play with.
That would be for the living space, could be to 15 feet, but the garage itself is supposed to be 20 feet still.
Okay. And you're not able or willing to bring that
forward?
Yeah,
I mean,
to create some sort of.
Yeah, I mean, I did struggle with that a little bit. We even explored pushing it back a little, but also the way that connects to the rest of the house felt a little haphazard.
Okay, so I think those cover my questions. My comments are pretty much in line with kind of what I've asked. So I appreciate that the applicant is leaving both of or not planning to affect either the tree on their own property or the tree on their neighbor's property. But I would want to see attached to the conditions of approval, a condition that tree protection be put in place so as not to impact the roots. I think that would be a very simple thing to do. Even, I heard mention of an arborist report. I don't think an arborist report is necessary, but a very typical staff level approved, fence detail at the canopy, I think would be fine. I also, I feel somewhat strongly, but I know that this is one single family home, but I feel like it's important, right? We don't want to, the roof elevation is so nice, and the way you've designed the slopes of the roof and the different materials look so nice, and it would just be a shame to have that public street facing elevation lack some of the same depth that you treated the rest of the project with. And then my final comment is related to the Coastal Commission letter. I think that we need to be eyes wide open that future residents of these neighborhoods need to be made aware of what's going on. And while I don't think it's appropriate to do it piecemeal, and this comment is maybe more to staff and my fellow commissioners, I don't think it's appropriate to do this here and to do it piecemeal, but I do want to understand what the vehicle is to start having this discussion so that we can do it in the future fairly and consistently. So again, maybe not something that we need to discuss with the applicant. Maybe we can discuss this in some way in the future, but I think it's important because it's coming up a lot. And, I do appreciate that there's an environmental issue at hand. So those are my comments, and I appreciate your time.
Commissioner Hauser for those points. Any other comments, questions, deliberation? Commissioner Leal.
Hi, yes, thank you. I have a question for, I think, staff and a question for the applicant. I'll just start off with staff first. I think one of the public commenters mentioned concern about restrictions to their property in the future due to sites or views. Can staff clarify whether the city has any current restrictions on blocking views or any view ordinances that would preclude any neighbors from doing something similar in their house in the future?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner Leal. So the simple answer is that the city does not have a view protection ordinance to protect private views. So the scenario that the commenter outlined where they may be prevented from improving their property or their neighbors might be impacted and limited from improving their property along Esplanade Avenue in order to protect views from this property owner on Dolphin, I don't believe to be true. The city has no express ordinance or policy to protect those private views. whatever development might be proposed in the future on Esplanade Avenue in this hypothetical, we would evaluate it for potential impacts to view corridors containing public views from significant public lands or public spaces that could result from whatever project is proposed in the future. But I don't think it's true to say that there would be some direct relationship between this private improvement at 544 Dolphin and restrictions on properties on Esplanade Avenue in order to protect the Dolphin properties' private views.
Okay, thanks for clarifying that. And then my other question was related to the material of the staircases. I hope it's stainless steel. I saw some stainless steel mentioned in regards to railings, but it looked like it was in reference to the actual the railing around the deck. So can you clarify what material the staircase, and my concern is due to its proximity of the Pacific Ocean. I think we know.
Yeah, definitely we would want it to be a material that would stand up, such as stainless steel.
Okay. And so when stainless steel is referenced regarding railings and posts, what's that referencing to?
I believe the call out was
specifically
specifically to the railing, the cables, and the frame of the railings, as opposed to
deck, right?
As opposed to the staircase. It's of the deck.
Okay.
It's just not explicitly stated in the plans that the staircase is intended to be stainless as well.
Okay. Is that the plan?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And my last comment, I guess my only comment would be I would be in favor of Commissioner Hauser's condition to further protect the tree, make sure that happens. And it seems like everyone is in favor of that.
Thank you, Commissioner Leal. Any additional questions, comments? Commissioner Berman.
Commissioner Hauser mentioned most of my questions. I also support the proposal of a new condition or addition to an existing condition to further protect the existing tree. I also want to support Commissioner Hauser's comment that wouldn't necessarily be applied to this project, but something that we consider moving forward. I don't know if it's a deed restriction or what it is, but for development in this area. I think there were a couple comments regarding it too. Just making sure that people purchasing homes in this area are aware of the hazards, whether they're obvious or not.
Thank you, Commissioner Berman.
Chair Niblin, would you offer me an opportunity to respond to some of the commissioners' concerns about deed restrictions and hazard disclosures?
Please go ahead.
Thank you. So I believe Commissioner Hauser mentioned that she felt like something broader than a project-specific approach should be taken by the city to address coastal hazards of the sort that might exist along the Esplanade Bluffs. So I would argue that broader process has already occurred through development of the local coastal land use plan update, the certification draft approved by the City Council. This issue of coastal hazards and when to impose deed restrictions, for instance, related to development, was discussed and considered, I'd say extensively, in my opinion, by the City Council when enacting, or I should say approving the certification draft. And so its conclusion was that the city should have policies that address what's defined as shoreline development. This approach and these policies that are contained in the certification draft would not apply to this project in the hypothetical situation where our certification draft LCP was in effect today. Reason being, this property does not intersect or front along the ocean, and it wouldn't be shoreline development as defined. Additionally, other policies would limit the application of some of the policies, given that the building would not encroach seaward of its current configuration. Some of the exterior decks would, but my recollection is that those types of structures that could be removed from the building would not be considered as a seaward encroachment under the policies in the certification draft LCLUP. And so importantly, the hazard exposure of a structure, so long as it didn't increase by going seaward or meeting certain other thresholds in the certification draft LCLUP, would not be subject to those limitations and deed restrictions, because it didn't fundamentally change the development that's on the property. So all of this is, again, hypothetical because it's not yet in effect. It's in the city's certification draft, which we are working hard to get certified by the Coastal Commission. But I think we've done that broader citywide consideration of this issue. And the City Council has come down with a set of policies that it feels strikes the right balance between allowing people to develop and enjoy the economic use of their property, as well as protecting the city as an entity from liability and costs associated with development.
Thank you, Mr. Murdoch. Well, with that said, Commissioner Domerat. Commissioner Domerat, please go ahead.
Oh, there we go. Okay, just a quick comment. I concur that discussion about construction in the coastal zone needs to continue. I think compared to many other places along the cliffs of Pacifica, this area is extremely protected. If you take a look at Google Earth or even just Google Maps and look at the base of the cliff along Esplanade, it's probably got some of the biggest revetment protecting the toe of the bluffs than any place else in Pacifica. So maybe to disgruntled Coastal Commission staffers, that revetment's not going to go anywhere, will provide quite a bit of protection from wave erosion. But that said, we live in a highly geotechnical active area. So you have a lot of the other hazards of building close to, one of a major earthquake zones in California. So you have those challenges, but that affects all of us. But in terms of direct impact of waves on Esplanade or that zone, I think we're okay for a while. That doesn't mean we do that everywhere, but take a cruise on Google Earth along the coast of Pacifica, and you'll see about 80% of it has significant protection already constructed. So not that we always like that, but that is a reality, certainly in that zone. So just a quick comment on that. But it does say we should continue that kind of discussion and what we could do in the future about that.
Thank you, Commissioner Domerat.
Chair Neblin, would you allow me to expand upon what Commissioner Domerat just mentioned?
Yeah, please.
Thank you, Chair. And so there was also the public comment that was mentioned by Mr. Garcia related to some of the hazard maps that were contained in the city's adaptation planning process that fed into the local coastal land use plan certification draft approval. I think it's important to qualify those with the information that Commissioner Domerat just shared, in that those projections of coastal erosion at 2100 did not, to my knowledge, take into account existing shoreline protection structures that might be in place. And so to whatever extent that erosion would occur in an uncontrolled manner to that limit by 2100, I think it's reasonable to conclude it would occur, if at all, at a much, much slower rate by the 2100 timeline. So I don't think that it's clear and convincing evidence that this project would, or this development site would be in danger under the current conditions with that revetment that's in place. And additionally, even if it was, this project wouldn't significantly enhance that. It's largely a vertical addition above an existing structure.
Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments or questions at this point? Otherwise, we can certainly be a place where we can entertain a motion. Commissioner Hauser.
Thank you. So I like this project, and I would like to make a motion on its behest with the condition that we kind of all spoke about on the trees. But I also wanted to gauge whether my fellow commissioners would be willing to support a somewhat broad condition that would allow staff to be kind of the reviewer on adding some additional facade, some facade depth, whether that be, a little bit of additional porch projection or something that just, I mean, this is a really nice project, and it's really bothering me that it's so flat on the front.
Commissioner Hauser, maybe I'll take the liberty of speaking before asking for other hands. I'd be in support of that kind of a. I'd probably want to ask staff or Ms. Sharma for some help with any nexus sort of analysis we might have to do on that. And candidly, it'd be great if the applicant were inclined to, I think, take you up on your very, I think, really well-placed suggestion. But maybe Ms. Sharma, you'd want to speak to sort of my concern.
Sure. So it would be acceptable to ask the applicants if they'd be willing to abide by that condition. And if not, then we would need a few more comments in the record about why that addition would be necessary. Maybe involving additional aesthetic impact could be a way to go. And I think that would take care of the nexus concerns.
Thank you, Ms. Sharma. Yeah, I think that Commissioner Hauser did a very nice job of articulating some of the significant aesthetic concerns and sort of the notion of the fact that it's street front facing and some other aspects that she raised. But I don't know, Mr. Brinkman or Ms. and Mr. Meager, whether there was anything you wanted to say to this.
I'll let Jarl and Monica respond to, but that's amenable to me. I have a couple ideas that we could play around with to subtly help provide some depth, especially on that garage side.
Yeah, so Commissioner Hauser, are you asking for some sort of visual break between the first and second story, the garage and what would be the bathroom?
No, to clarify, it's more of a, let me go back to the rendering. So if you look at 3D view 2, where you have your front door, the hardy paneled blue portion and the gray portion that's the face of your garage are on the exact same plane. So whether it be some sort of recess for your front door or projection for your, whatever it may be, I'm asking that there's some element besides the roof line that takes your facade and breaks it up slightly. It doesn't have to be a huge change to your architecture, just one element that provides some visual interest from the public street, which I think is a finding that we have to make, Ms. Sharma. So that was kind of the nexus I was looking to.
Yeah.
Great, thank you. That was great.
Thank you. I guess I'd ask you, Commissioner Hauser, given that you've had sort of the most to say about probably the most aspects of this, recognizing and acknowledging comments from other commissions as well, whether or not you thought you might be in a position to perhaps craft a motion around what you had in mind.
Certainly. So I would like to move that the Planning Commission find the project is exempt from the California Environmental Quality Act, approve Coastal Development Permit CDP 42320 by adopting the attached resolution, including conditions of approval in Exhibit A, including a condition that would have tree protection fencing at the approval of staff or to staff's liking, as well as include an element along the facade to break up the front elevation, also to staff's discretion, and incorporate all maps and testimony into the record by reference.
Is there a second for Commissioner Hauser's motion? Commissioner Ferguson.
I'll second Commissioner Hauser's motion.
Thank you. So we have the motion and the second. And I guess what I do is I just really quickly like to check with that Commissioner Mr. Murdoch to confirm his understanding of the motion and the second.
Thank you, Chair. I have some suggested language for the Commission's consideration as well as for confirmation from Ms. Sharma. So the first, with respect to tree protection, I would suggest that the motion add a new condition of approval that reads, prior to commencement of construction activity, the applicant shall install tree protection fencing at ground level around the drip line of the existing cypress tree at the rear of the project site to the satisfaction of the planning director. The tree protection fencing shall remain in place until the building permit for the project passes final inspection.
May I qualify? I'm sorry, Chair. May I qualify that my request was for both the tree in the rear yard and the tree that has a root system that's probably over the property line, because so much of that canopy overhangs. But other than that, I'm totally fine with the language.
So Commissioner Hauser, it was my understanding it was the cypress tree at the rear of the project site. You wanted some revision to that language to make it clear it's the tree that's on the neighboring property.
Yeah, I was hoping that both trees would be protected since they both are look to be ordinance sized trees. I'm just going to the site plan. So if you look at sheet A 1.1, it's labeled existing 18 and 24-inch cypress heritage trees to remain, as well as the one in the rear yard labeled cypress heritage tree to remain.
I see. I didn't hear your earlier concern about the tree at the front. Forgive me. So let me make that adjustment.
Apologies. Commissioner Damarad, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just a point of clarification on the motion. Is the change to the sight line at the front of the property near the front door and the garage door going to be a condition of the permit, or is it a consideration for the homeowners to either do or not do, depending on how they feel the aesthetics of the project should look? I'm certainly not a fan of what I call the Wizard of Oz way of doing building in Pacifica, where you drop a box on a house, and that's so far from what Mr. Brickman designs, and so I can understand, sight lines, but I would say at this point, unless there's some ordinance that mandates that we have to have aesthetically pleasing sight lines to everything we do, I would like to consider it a consideration rather than a condition of the permit, if that would be okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Damarad. My understanding of what was in the motion was that it would in fact be a requirement that the plan be broken up in some manner that was to the satisfaction of the planning director on the basis of the aesthetic impacts that Commissioner Hauser had articulated. But I certainly understand your your position, which I think is well articulated as well.
Yes, Commissioner Damarad, we do have an element of this project, given that it's in the Coastal Commission Appeals jurisdiction. Design review is required, and we've interpreted that to mean consistency with the city's adopted design guidelines. And so there is a relationship to the aesthetic concerns that Commissioner Hauser has expressed and the commission's action on this permit. And so it would be appropriate, if it was the will of the commission majority, to impose it as a requirement. But fortunately, the applicants, I heard them agree to make the modification, and so we don't need necessarily to further develop evidence for the design guidelines issue. And so with respect to the condition that Commissioner Hauser asked for to protect wayward construction work from damaging the mature trees with drip lines on the site, let's try this second version of this condition. So we would add a new condition of approval. Prior to commencement of construction activity, the applicant shall install tree protection fencing at ground level around the drip lines of all trees, with drip lines extending into the project site to the satisfaction of the planning director. The tree protection fencing shall remain in place until the building permit for the project passes final inspection. Great. And then with respect to the facade modification, I would suggest prior to issuance of a building permit and as agreed by the applicant shall revise the project plans so that the front elevation includes additional relief along the first floor facade to the satisfaction of the planning director.
Commissioner Hauser, does that square with what you had in mind?
Yes, that's a very good reflection. Thank you for putting that together so nicely, Mr. Murdoch.
Some speedy drafting there, and Commissioner Ferguson, in light of those specifically articulated conditions, do you continue to second the motion?
I do.
Great. Well, we have a motion and a second, as has been discussed. I'm going to ask for a roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Berman.
Yes.
Commissioner Domerat,
Yes.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Godwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner Leal,
Yes.
Commissioner Niblin.
Yes,
That motion passes unanimously.
thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brinkman, Ms. and Mr. Meager, and thanks, Mr. Murdoch, for the quick drafting of those additional conditions.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so that then will take us to the communications portion of the agenda. I'll ask if there are any commission communications. I will note that Commissioner Hauser and I presented the annual report. We actually covered a 2-year period for the Planning Commission at a recent City Council meeting, and the City Council was very appreciative of all the work that that commissioners have been doing over the course of the last year, 2 years actually, and acknowledging of the significant time and sacrifice of commissioners. And we took the opportunity also to thank our staff, from the Planning Department for their really amazing support, certainly over the time I've been on the Planning Commission and certainly over the course of the last couple of years. So I've got that to report. I don't know, Commissioner Hauser, if there's anything else you wanted to say about that. Great. Any other commissioner communications? Great. We'll move then to staff communications.
Nothing to report, Chair. Thank you.
Great. Well, that'll take us to adjournment of the meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Hauser,
I will make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Commissioner Domerat.
Second.
Motion and a second. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Berman,
Yes.
Commissioner Domerat,
Yes.
Commissioner Ferguson,
Yes.
Commissioner Godwin,
Yes.
Commissioner Hauser,
Yes.
Commissioner Leal,
Yes.
Commissioner Niblin.
Yes.
That motion passes unanimously.
Great. Well, good night, everybody.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.